Hey guys, welcome back. Atisha here, back for another Shattered Dreams Restored reading. Go ahead and do me a favor and hit the like button. I don't know what to say about Irene. This chapter is chapter 13 entitled Love, and I hope it's not a bunch of lovey-dovey poem after poem sounding like I'm in high school reading this chapter, because if I'm being completely honest, the other chapter of her and her love for Lane and all that other stuff was a little bit juvenile to me. And I'm hoping that we're seeing some evolution here. I'm hoping we're seeing that this is a woman that can stand on her own 2 feet, and it's not love, love, let's write H's and Hectors all over the place. Because of her age, it's making me be a little like, girl, I get that you're stunted a little bit, but this is a bit much. Also, I'm seeing in the comment section that a lot of the fam has mentioned the book The Sound of Gravel. Well, guess what? I have it. So what we're going to do is, after we're done reading this book, we're going to go ahead and jump into that. And if I remember correctly, when we read her other book, it was between Shattered Dreams and Sound of Gravel, and everyone picked Shattered Dreams. So I think it ended up working out right, because now that we've heard that story, we can read about that person in that book. So I have it, and that will be our next reading. But I have done enough talking. That's not what you're here for. Let's begin. Now, back in America, I hoped the year of 1987 wouldn't pass by without God coming through for me. I stayed with my married daughter Connie in San Diego while experiencing a very hectic week visiting my children and grandchildren. My mind was constantly on Hector. It had been a few years since I'd seen him. The last I knew, he was living in St. George, Utah. I wondered if or when I'd run into him again. Okay, I'm going to try to flip this around. I'll be reading this from all types of devices. I'm going to flip this around so y'all can see. Do y'all see Hector and her? She says that's her and Hector looking for love. I spent extra time on my knees, placing my future solely in God's hands. I was desperate to do his will, considering where I'd been. I could no longer rely on my own judgment, yet I knew God could make miracles out of my mess. If Hector was to be a part of my life, God would work out all the details. So if my premonition was true, I had absolutely no worries. If it was a good thing, nothing could stop it. And if it wasn't, there was absolutely nothing I could personally do to bring it to pass. I relied on the Bible promises of Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. This passage gave me comfort as I waited upon his promises. My dear friend Renata Neat, who was a half-sister to Lane, invited me to join her for lunch. After hugs and familiar salutations, we sat at a table in Denny's. No sooner had we ordered our food when Renata reached into her purse, withdrawing a book. She handed it to me. Irene, I want you to read this. It will help you move on with your life. I laughed as I read the title, How to Fall Out of Love. When my chuckle subsided, she spoke words of encouragement. You have so much love to give. You need to forget about Lane and move on. There's someone out there who will love and appreciate you, but you'll never find him until you completely let go of Lane. Immediately, I shoved the book back into her hands. Thanks, but I don't need to read this. I know who I'm going to marry. Okay, here's the thing. Even if you know who you're going to marry, she's giving you a book that's supposed to help you, I guess, get through some things. I personally would have at least given it a read. But Irene very much so jumps from man to man. I hate to say it, but that's what it seems like. And she doesn't really work on her individual self before that process, at least not according to this book. That's not what we're seeing. The look on Renata's face was one of complete disbelief. We always shared our secrets and dreams through the years. She knew if it were true, I would have confided in her. Being inquisitive, she was feeling snubbed. Who is he, Irene? I can't tell you because he doesn't even know about it yet. I laughed apologetically. Renata cracked up laughing, thinking I'd really pull her leg this time. Come on, please, Irene. If it's true, I promise I won't tell anyone who it is. I'm going to swear you to secrecy because it would be humiliating if it ever got out. Knowing I could trust my friend, I whispered, "It's Hector Spencer." Unable to contain her excitement, Renata jumped up from the table. Irene, I can see the two of you together. She embraced me. You know, Hector was my neighbor in Mexico. I really got to know him well. He is a gentleman, so reserved, well-mannered, and intelligent. He dresses immaculately. You deserve him. I then related my dream to her and my premonition about his name beginning with an H, which I received months before. You do know he's been divorced for over 2 years now. In fact, his 14-year-old daughter, Mandy, won Miss Preteen Utah. Her picture was in the newspaper just last week. Wow, that's exciting. I bet Hector is so proud of her. I've got the perfect idea. You can call to congratulate him on his daughter's winning title and just take it from there. I looked at my watch, knowing I had to get back immediately to Connie's. I promised to tend to her 4 children so she can enjoy an evening out with her husband. I must run, Neat, but please just zip what I've told you. I promise, if anything ever comes of Hector, you will be the first to know. Later in the evening, when the grandchildren were settled down in their pajamas, I said a little prayer as I called information. I wrote down the number that the operator gave me. Although I was 50, I felt as giddy as a teenager. How would I start my conversation? What would I say to him? I had butterflies in my stomach and I felt stupid, but I nervously dialed the telephone number anyway. The phone rang 6 times before I nervously hung it up. I was actually relieved that he wasn't home. I spent the next half an hour questioning my sanity. Would Hector wonder why I was really calling? Later, would he think I was conniving? If anything did work out between us, would he be pleased to hear from me again? As I asked myself these questions, I gathered up enough courage to give it just one more try. Okay, I get that she feels like this is being orchestrated by God, right? I just feel like if you have to do all of these things in order to have it happen, and if you don't allow it to just happen naturally, are you really giving a higher being, whatever your beliefs is, opportunity to get that thing rolling, or are you inserting yourself and making it happen and then saying it's him? I'm just saying, call me a cynic, but sometimes I feel like people put things on higher powers when it's really just them. But that's just my thoughts. Tell me yours. I told myself that if he didn't answer the second time, then maybe it really wasn't meant to be. Nervously, I dialed the phone again. With the receiver to my ear, I listened as 3 rings seemed to drag into eternity. My heart fluttered when I heard a male voice. I mean, you only been blowing up his phone, so... I'm just saying, like, oh my gosh, you answered the phone, but you kept calling, so yeah. Sorry, y'all. Hello, this is Hector Spencer. Who do I have the pleasure of speaking with? For the first time in my life, I was completely lost for words. This is Irene LeBaron. Do you remember me? I felt awkward. Trying to remember the purpose of the call was to praise him for his daughter's winning Miss Preteen title. We discussed old times and old friends. Soon, I realized I've been conversing for 25 minutes. 25 minutes? Oh my God. No. Okay, I'm gonna stop. I learned he was divorced from Judy, Verlin's niece. She remarried. His 6 children from his first marriage lived in Salt Lake City and St. George. Judy's 2 daughters lived with her in St. George also. Hector asked about Lane. I thought, well, what do you think that I'm calling about? I confirmed the fact that Lane was completely out of my life. As our conversation wound down, he surprised me by asking, would you like to go to lunch with me sometime? I go to San Diego every once in a while on business. It would be a pleasure to see you again. I accepted his invitation, stating I would be available whenever he called. I left the house early Saturday morning, accompanied by my daughter, Connie. We knew how great the garage sales were and didn't want to miss out. I felt guilty about abandoning my daughter, Sandra. She'd given birth 2 days earlier to a baby girl and was recuperating at Connie's. Understanding that the garage sales were our favorite pastime, she insisted that I go as long as I didn't take advantage of the situation. She assured me she'd be okay until I returned. About 11 a.m., I called home to check on her. Mother, Hector Spencer has been calling to reach you. He left a message saying he wanted to take you to lunch. I told him you'd be home soon, so you better come back and get ready to go out with him. I moved into panic mode. Fear gripped me. I needed to check reality. Would I like him? Was I being too forward? I certainly didn't want to give any false hope. What if we didn't click? Back at Connie's, I quickly showered, then tried on 3 different blouses. I wanted to kick myself around the block. If I'd have known that Hector was going to drive 8 hours the very next day after our conversation, I would have lost at least 30 pounds and bought a new blouse. I wanted to make a good first impression. I wondered if my weighing over 200 pounds would be a challenge for him. Hector called me again. While I was in the shower, Sandra invited him to come over, so I made a mad dash to be presentable when he arrived. So Hector calling just as much as her. Okay, they both like to make a whole bunch of calls. Connie answered the door. She remembered Hector from years back when we lived in Colonial LeBaron. She only saw him 2 or 3 times a year, mostly when he was in the vicinity doing business. He'd sold his farm to LeBaron several years earlier and dropped by to collect payments. She was impressed by his demeanor. He always dressed in slacks, a blazer, and a tie. His thin, 150-pound frame was impeccably groomed. Hector and I left immediately, deciding to go to Denny's. There we could eat, drink coffee, and visit as long as we wanted. We could become reacquainted again. We hadn't kept track of time because we'd become so engrossed in one another's stories. It was almost midnight. Hector dropped me off at Connie's, extracting a promise that I'd be ready early to go for breakfast. Then we could spend the entire day together. After a prolonged breakfast, we drove to a city park where we found a beautiful shady spot and seated ourselves at a redwood picnic table. We laughed, barely mentioning our failed relationships. In Hector's soft-spoken manner, he related his story. He went into detail about his religious beliefs, stating how he'd given up on Mormonism. That one statement alone convinced me that we would be compatible. I was tired of so many man-made rules. He didn't discuss religion much, but his personality showed through as he spoke. I was impressed by his gentleness, kindness, and manners. I'd always shied away from confrontational men. Instantly, when I felt threatened, I wanted to run away to some safe place where I'd be protected. But seeing Hector's calm nature, I felt safe with his non-judgmental attitude. Without him knowing it, I questioned him. thoroughly to see what I'd have to do or believe in order to be accepted by him. He gave me the same answer my sister Becky always told me. If two people believe exactly alike, one of them is unnecessary. I was surprised because in my previous culture, a man controlled the woman. He did your thinking for you. He felt it was not only his privilege, but his right by virtue of priesthood he held. In fact, it was up to him to exalt you by calling you through to the veil of eternity. That is the part of this whole situation about polygamy, at least this branch, that makes no sense to me. I cannot see myself being a part of a religion, a cult, that tells me that my fate is determined by a man that I'm married to, rather than my own works, my own deeds, the way that I love people and care about people. Because if I'm married to somebody like Elaine, who is assaulting people, then that means because he's messed up, so am I. That alone would make me feel like there's no way I could be a part of this. But they brainwashed so many people at such a young age that they believe this mess. I learned at a tender age that your thinking had been done. Just be submissive and follow the rules. I would never last in that faith because I'm too opinionated. I can't do it. And listening to this and being told that men tell you what to think and what to do and everything that you do is through a man, nah. As we reminisce, I learned he loved to sing and had used his talent throughout his life. He sang in operettas, at weddings, and at parties. When I inquired if he still sang, he belted out "Beautiful Ohio." Immediately, my voice joined his. I sang alto as the two of us harmonized. Before long, it turned into a singing session right there in the park. Though Hector was 14 years my senior, we sang the same familiar songs. Soon, he opened up, just barely touching on the subject of his two previous marriages. Before long, we both expressed our failures and feelings of rejection because of them. When both of us shed a few unexpected tears, he suggested it was time to leave for something to eat. We spent 2 more hours at a late lunch. As the hours ticked away, he expressed his hesitancy to return home so soon. It was Sunday, and Hector stated that he wanted to leave by 4 p.m. The 8-hour drive back to St. George would get him home by midnight. Back at Connie's in the driveway, I had a hard time following Hector's new rules. He insisted I sit tight while he jumped out to run around to open the door. He's a gentleman. He's a gentleman. Chivalry goes a long way. I think it is so sweet. Y'all, my fur baby. My fur baby is chivalrous. Now, he stays with his dad, right? So whenever I leave, it doesn't matter the time of night, that dog is going to get up from his position, walk me to the door, wait for me to give him a kiss, give him a hug, and leave. And if the windows are open the slightest bit, I can see him like peeking to watch me as I walk to the car. When I say it is the sweetest thing, it is the sweetest thing. My fur baby is such a gentleman. More of a gentleman than his dad, being honest, but I'm just saying. It's the cutest thing. Chivalry is nice. Like, look, as a woman, I like to feel like, oh, thank you so much. And I'm going to say thank you every time. And I'm going to appreciate it every time. I taught my son very early on how to hold a door and open a door. And he always gets a thank you and compliments. And, oh, he's so nice. Thank you so much, young man, when we go out, because he'll hold the door for others as well. And manners is a great thing. Okay, I'm off topic. Back to this. He insisted that I sit tight while he jumped out to run around to open the door. I felt too unworthy to be waited upon. What does that say about her esteem? That she felt unworthy to have a door open for her. Wow. In fact, I felt guilty having this kind of attention bestowed upon me. I opened the door before he had a chance. No, 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 he insisted. This is my pleasure. I'll always open the door for you. Hector stood close, leaning on the car door, shielding my body so I couldn't get out. I could tell that he wanted to share a few words privately before we were both bombarded by the grandchildren. He smiled, as he did in my dream in England. When can I take you out again? He caught me off guard. I laughed because I wondered if he was at all interested in seeing me again. Well, today is November 8th, and I'm going to Stockton, California to spend Thanksgiving with my oldest daughter, Donna. Then I am flying to Alaska, where I will spend Christmas with my 3 children who live in Anchorage. Then I'll be back here in San Diego on the 2nd of February. He stood there speechless. His smile faded. I could see his disapproval because my agenda had just thwarted his plans. Why be away so long? Why wait until February? Because my birthday is February 1st, and I promised I'd be with my children to celebrate. He was silent as he took my arm, helping me to exit the car. He encroached on my space as though to detain me until I gave him a reasonable answer. With determination in his voice, he asked, "What do I need to do to talk you out of going?" Here's the thing. I'm all for you wanting to spend more time with her, but these are her children who are still school age, who someone else is currently taking care of, and she should go and see her children. That's my opinion. Y'all tell me yours. I couldn't contain my laughter. I guess you just need to keep asking. Relieved, he excitedly planted a surprise kiss on my left cheek. So tell me, Irene, when can we get together again? I didn't want to cancel all my plans. I'll go to California for Thanksgiving. Then we'll get together again. He walked me into the house. After a brief goodbye to my family, he left for home. 2 days later, I was surprised when a postman brought a letter for me. Eagerly, I tore it open. Inside, on a yellow Post-it note, a short handwritten message. I can't get you out of my mind, Hector. I began to think maybe I had impressed him. The following day, again, another envelope arrived with another Post-it note inside. Irene, I think you're the greatest, Hector. Oh, Hector. Hector said, I'm going to send you a message every day. I'm going to send you a little message every day in a Post-it note. I'm going to spend these, I don't know how much stamps were back then, 20 cents every day. I don't remember, because I remember at a point when stamps were like 32 cents. So I'm going to spend these cents every day and make sure that I send you a letter. I'm going to keep the postal service operating, and you're going to get your letter from me, your Post-it from me. The brief messages continued for 2 weeks until I left to visit my oldest daughter, Donna. In the meantime, I looked forward to my daily phone calls. I felt like I was 16 again. Our phone conversations lasted up to an hour or more at times. Hector wanted to know the exact date and time I would be arriving back to San Diego. I told him not to worry. I promised I'd call him when I returned, because I was just playing it by ear. I didn't know for sure how long Donna would talk me into staying. I didn't see her quite as often as the other children because she lived away from the family. It was my intention to stay as long as she was enjoying me. Once at Donna's, the daily phone calls began again. Each time I heard Hector's excitement in his voice, anticipating my return. The day I was going to buy my plane ticket, Donna urged me to stay 3 more days, so I consented. About 5 p.m., Donna answered her phone. It was Hector. He sheepishly confessed he'd been waiting in San Diego for over 2 hours, watching travelers on the flight from Sacramento disembark the plane. Oh, Lord, you doing too much, Hector. It's sweet, but I mean, let the girl spend some time with her daughter. I'm just saying. He was disappointed I hadn't arrived. Donna apologized for the misunderstanding. Mother decided to stay a couple more days. If she'd known you were driving all that way to meet her plane, she would have left for sure. Oh, it's my fault. I just wanted to surprise her, he laughed. I guess the surprise is on me. Donna passed me the receiver. Once I talked to Hector and learned of all the particulars, I made a quick decision. I felt guilty putting Hector out after he had driven 8 hours to see me. Not wanting to inconvenience him any further, I announced I would catch the Greyhound bus out of Stockton at midnight. I slept most of the night. After a short stop in Los Angeles, I arrived in San Diego a little after 10 a.m. I couldn't believe the excitement I felt upon seeing him. We hugged warmly. He held my hand in one of his as he carried out my suitcase with the other. I can't pinpoint the moment that love entered the equation. All I know is that in Hector's presence, I felt secure and validated. In some odd ways, it seemed our lives were destined to merge. My children became alarmed when my main focus was on my suitor. I would be too, given how you just jump from person to person and how you don't seem to take the time to really know the ins and outs of certain people, and how you had that experience with Lane and how you were all depressed and other stuff before this guy came along. I would be concerned too. I would. My steps seemed lighter as I waited for letters, cards, phone calls, and his return. Both my daughters, Connie and Sandra, complained they were afraid of losing me. If I married Hector, they feared I'd only be loyal to him, ignoring their individual needs. Okay, that's the problem though too. I don't know how old Connie and Sandra are, but I know Connie, she say she was staying at Connie, so she has a husband and things of that nature. There's a transition that's supposed to occur as you become older. Are your parents still supposed to be there for you? Yes, of course they are. But I feel like it's also important for them to have love too. Now, if she's picking him over them all the time, then that would be a problem for me. But her falling in love with someone and her being with someone, meaning that maybe you don't get to see her 6 times out of the year and you only get to see her 2, that's what happens sometimes. Maybe you come and see her. I'm just saying. They knew I loved them all very deeply, but were concerned that I'd neglect them. I tried to console everyone who'd offered an opinion, relating that Hector hadn't mentioned marriage to me. Maybe it's the beginning of a great friendship, I told them. No one knows what the future holds. My words of consolation fell on deaf ears. I felt pressured. They knew I could never quit loving them. Now they needed to act like adults. Yeah, that's true. By realizing I too deserve some attention and companionship. I agree. Wasn't I just saying that, like, at some point you got to allow your mom to have a life too that's not revolving around you all. She's doted on everybody else for so many years. Let her fill her need in the way that she needs to, even though I said what I said earlier. When I answered the door on December 12th, there stood Hector, all decked out as usual. He looked handsome in his tan slacks, brown jacket, and polished shoes. In his hand, he held a pot of beautiful red poinsettias. He hugged me. Then he presented me with the flowers. I almost cried. Y'all, I don't like red poinsettias. Okay, I think they're pretty, but I like the white ones better. And I don't even know if they're natural white ones, but yeah. Anyways, I would have wanted a different type of flower. I love sunflowers. I love sunflowers, but this isn't about me. This is about Irene, and Irene was happy to get her red poinsettias. He hugged me, then presented me the flowers, and I almost cried. Flowers? I longed to receive flowers over the years, but my wish was never fulfilled. She never got any flowers from either one of her husbands. Wow. They meant so much. Hector was surprised when I displayed so much emotion. I was more than grateful because this was only the third time that I've been given flowers in my life. Wow. She's 40 something years old. Wow. Hector decided to take me to Corando Island. I don't know if I said that right. Coronado, to spend the day. We were lucky it was so warm. I donned on a light jacket in case it turned out cold. Sure enough, after we parked, I noticed a chilly breeze blowing in from the Pacific Ocean. The moist beach sand oozed between my toes, halfway over my foot. I bent down and removed my sandals. Hector insisted on carrying them. I never had a man who was such a servant, who waited on me every chance, because Hector sounds like he's a gentleman. We sauntered hand in hand along the wet beach. Hector made sure neither of his slacks nor shoes got wet. We walked quite a distance from where we parked. I began to feel uncomfortable as the wind nipped at my body. I suggested we leave before I got chilled, so we made our way back to the Corando Hotel. It was a beautiful landmark, which I'd seen from afar for many years, but never had the opportunity to check out. After we inspected the gift shop, we took up my favorite pastime, watching people. I like people watching too, Irene. I do. I don't know why, but I enjoy it, especially when I'm outdoors. Like, I will go and grab a bite to eat somewhere and sit in my car and just watch people. It's relaxing. I also love the beach. I love the beach. I love the water. So hearing her say that, I can relate to that. It was delightful to notice every person who passed by, especially those who looked like lovers. I could just imagine all the fun they were experiencing. I wondered if travel and upscale hotels were in my near future. We were starved. It was about 5 p.m., and we hadn't eaten since breakfast. Hector suggested our regular hangout again at Denny's. He asked for a booth where he sat comfortably across me. I did most of the talking, especially after we'd eaten. The waitress declared the table. The waitress cleared. Where did I get declared? I will make up some words, but I appreciate y'all. I appreciate you guys still being here despite me making up words. The waitress cleared the table, removing the dirty dishes. And in spite of being stuffed, Hector insisted on buying a slice of coconut cream pie to share. He apologized to the waitress for not leaving as soon as we'd eaten. He explained that we needed privacy. He smiled kindly, asking her to keep the coffee hot. During the hour of light talk, our cups were continually filled. Hector took a sip, then he set his cup down, hoping it would cool a bit. Then he looked me in the eyes. What do you think Verlin would say if I asked you to marry me? I couldn't help it. I laughed out loud as I thought, what does my late husband have to do with it? What a far-fetched, uncomfortable question. I hesitated a brief moment, then asked, well, are you asking me? I could see his unease as he searched for an answer. That is a weird way to, why are we bringing up Verlin? That's not romantic to me. But whatever, we're going to keep going. Well, I guess I am. Then he raised his coffee cup, touching mine in a toast as he looked heavenward, speaking in Spanish. A ti, Verlin. To you, Verlin. That brought tears to my eyes. Hector lost no time, scooting himself around the booth close to my side. He kissed me on the lips for the first time. You will say yes, won't you? Suddenly, uncertainty enveloped me. I felt Hector hadn't had enough time to know what he really wanted or felt. I did not want him to rush into a marriage with me just because I was available or that he was desperately lonely. I wanted to be certain that his proposal was based on love. My eyes moistened as I searched for the right words. I believed that Hector was the right man for me, but I needed more validation from him. I truly felt I received guidance through the premonition I received about his name starting with an H. My second confirmation was when he appeared to me in a dream in England. Thanks, Hector, for the offer. It means the world to me, but I feel you should take your time. Really think this over good. Then, when you know for sure that it's what you want, come back and ask me again. I read the disappointment on his face as he reached for the bill. He paid, then drove me to Connie's. He walked me to the front door, kissed me, then went to his hotel. I'm glad that she didn't say yes right away, especially because I felt like she was desperate for love. But her not saying yes right away kind of makes me feel like, okay, maybe she is thinking this thing through. Maybe she is handling this from a different angle. And I can take my words back a little bit on that. I tossed and turned, feeling the jitters. Had I driven Hector away? Did he think I'd been rude when I laughed? When he asked me, what would Verlin think? Did I stick my foot in my mouth? Or maybe humiliate him? Would this cause him to change his mind? I was up early, showered and making sure I looked my best. Connie heard me moving around in the kitchen. She joined me for our cup of usual coffee. Have you been having a good time with Hector? Get it out. Did he leave town already? I shared the events of the previous day, but I did not mention the proposal. However, I did confirm my interest in him. I told her that he'd soon come to take me with him. We'd spend time together until the early afternoon, at which time he would be returning to St. George, Utah again. Connie's house was soon buzzing with her 4 children demanding their usual Sunday breakfast of waffles. Above the commotion, I could hear the doorbell ring. I knew it was Hector, so I answered, inviting him in. He always dressed sharply, but this morning he appeared in a blue-gray suit, a light blue shirt, and a light maroon silk tie. After welcoming him, Connie commented that he looked so spiffy, like he was going to a wedding. She offered to feed the both of us, but Hector declined, telling her he was taking me out for breakfast. Connie, is there a room where your mother and I could talk privately before we leave for the day? I was afraid Hector would hear my heart pounding in my chest. Connie led us into the girls' bedroom where it would be the quietest. It was at the end of the hall, a place where it could block the confusion from the noisy children. Hector locked the bedroom door, stating that he didn't want to be interrupted. To me, his seriousness seemed to be a signal he was the bearer of bad news. We were standing between the girls' 2 single-sized beds when Hector asked me if I would sit down. I felt like an idiot. In my mind, there was absolutely no reason to sit down. I figured if he wanted to end our relationship, he could just blurt it out at once and for all. No, Hector, I can't take it standing up. Whatever it is you want to say, just spill it. I sensed his rejection as he once again ordered me to sit down. Girl, I think he's about to propose. You talked about how good he looks. I don't think a man is going to look this good and this great to break up with you. I think he's telling you to sit down because maybe he wants to get on one knee. Y'all, 38 minutes in. Tell me what you think. Is Hector about to propose, or am I jumping to conclusions here? Because it's feeling very much so like proposal. Why is he pulling you off to the side in that room? Y'all could have talked in another room. Why did he come to the house that early? It's breakfast. Like, girl, he's about to propose. Let's see. Wanting to end what I thought was the beginning of a confrontation, I obediently seated myself on the frilly pink bedspread. Hector instantly fell to one knee as he reached for my hand. Were we right? Hector said, "You're not going to say that I'm not serious about what I asked you at the coffee shop about what Verlin say, okay, if I married you. You are going to realize that I'm serious." Okay, Hector. Okay, you're moving quick, but okay. I was completely shocked at his words. As his words thumbled out, "Will you marry me?" Hector spoke again before I could respond. You told me to come back and ask you again when I was positive of what I wanted. I have never been more sure of anything in my life. Why am I getting emotional? Will you marry me? Oh, Hector. Hector said, you told me to come back again. I'm going to read that again. To ask you again when I was positive of what I wanted. And I've never been more sure. I have never been, he said, never been more sure of anything in my life. Will you marry me? Of course I will. Okay. Of course I will. He positioned his hands on the side of my face, planted a kiss on my lips, and smiled. You've made me so happy. I wasn't too sure what Hector was up to as we strolled through the mall, but I wasn't exactly surprised when he led me into Zales. He asked the clerk to show him a few wedding rings. I felt so honored. I'd never owned a diamond before. Each set we looked at was more elegant than the previous one. Hector urged me to take a traditional wedding ring with a big diamond in the center adorned by 2 diamonds on the side. The price itself convinced me to go for a smaller set. I told him I preferred the engagement ring with just 1 solitary diamond and the wedding band, 2 smaller ones. I was on a high as I exited the mall wearing my engagement ring. I spied a public telephone. Oh, Hector, I remembered I must call my friend, Renata. I promised her she would be the first to know if I decided to get married again. I want her to hear our good news before any of my children. Okay, Irene. I like it. I could barely dial the payphone. Hello, Neat. This is Irene. Hey, Irene. Did you ever get a hold of Hector? I laughed. That's why I'm calling you. I want you to say hello to my future husband. With that shocking announcement, I quickly handed the phone to Hector. I could hear Renita giggle with excitement. They talked for a minute as he confirmed the fact that we were engaged and would soon be married. I retrieved the receiver again with a promise to Renata that the two of us Renita, I keep saying her name wrong, that the two of us would get together soon sometime. I'm a little concerned, Hector, about telling my children. They'll be upset that they won't have constant access to me. I knew that marrying him and moving away would upset them, especially when I would distance myself from the grandkids. I had 29 and the oldest was only 7. Hector suggested we drive to Vegas in the evening and get married. Oh, y'all do. See, I get that y'all want to be happy, but that's the part that's a little like, you don't want to include the kids on it. I'm just saying. Okay, Christine. She's acting very much like Christine in this. I'm just saying, if you watch Sister Wives, this is very Christine-y and David-y. He then invited me to go to Mexico with him for a week where we could tell my other children our plans. I laughed, insisting that was rushing things. My 23-year-old daughter, Margaret, surprised us just the day before on December 12th when she arrived in San Diego from Anchorage to spend time until after the holidays. She was my greatest concern, so I cautioned Hector I could not leave so soon. Margaret always defended her father, Verlin, throughout our marital problems by taking his side. I now hoped she'd be kind and supportive about my hasty decision in becoming engaged. 4 of my daughters, Connie, Verlana, Sandra, and Margaret, were having a gab session over coffee in Connie's master bedroom when we returned. They held their cups, sipping hot tea. Sipping hot coffee. There I go, making up words again. As I entered, Hector lingered behind me in the doorway, not wanting to intrude on their privacy unless they personally invited him into their bedroom. What's up? Margaret asked, surprised to see Hector and me back so soon. The girls laughed as they invited him to join in their therapy session. Sandra chimed in, Mom, I can see that you're up to something. What is it? Hector broke the silence before I had a chance to speak. He searched for my left hand, then held it up where they all could see. Look at your mom's ring. We're engaged. Like an exploding water balloon, their countenances showed numerous responses, but they were all too shocked to speak. To my embarrassment, right in front of Hector, Margaret tearfully began reprimanding me. Mother, how many times have you even dated this man? You don't even know him. I've known him for over 30 years. She wouldn't let up as her accusations continued. Isn't this way too fast? Aren't you leaping into something without giving it much thought? Why don't you give yourself some time to really get to know him? Most people don't get to know their husbands until after marriage, and then they wish they didn't. I know all of you are thinking that I'm moving quickly, but believe me, at my age, I need to act fast before death catches up to me. My mind is made up. I'll soon be Mrs. Hector J. Spencer. Sensing the girl's devastation, Hector excused himself, leaving us to talk things over and shed a few tears. His intention was that I'd appease my children, then choose to travel with him 13 hours to Chihuahua, Mexico. His sister and a few nephews lived in colonial Dublin and Casas Grandes. He suggested I could visit in the LeBaron colony with my married sons, Andre, Stephen, Brent, and their families for a week, as I could spend time with him and make arrangements for our future marriage. When I suggested to the girls that Hector wanted me to travel with him, the squabbling grew more intense. The girls reminded me that they should come first. This is different when you have grown kids. And if any of you are in the chat that have older children, who are like in their 20s and things of that nature, you guys tell me what you think of this, because I got mixed feelings, because I do feel like she should consider her children's thoughts to a certain extent, but I'm not saying that she should stop everything that she's doing. Maybe just slow it down. Those are my thoughts. It was almost Christmas, and they wanted me to celebrate with them. I felt torn. I could detect Hector's frustration as I read his facial expressions. He wanted to know if my children would always come before him. His sign of jealousy unnerved me. I walked him outside to his Chrysler LeBaron car. He hugged me goodbye, then gave me a kiss and said sadly, I wish you were going to Mexico with me, but I do understand you want to be with your children, especially since it's so close to the holidays. Less than half an hour later, the phone rang. It was Hector saying he was at a gas station where he just filled up the car. He wondered if maybe I changed my mind and decided to go with him. He offered to come back if I wanted him to. I thanked him for his thoughtfulness, reassuring him I get a ride down to Mexico in a few days and join him. Hector, don't push. I received another phone call a few hours later. Hector was in Casa Grande, Arizona, where he gassed up again. I can still turn around and go back for you. Yeah, that would annoy me. He laughed, but I knew it was no joke. He wanted me with him desperately. Thanking him again for his thoughtfulness, I wished him Godspeed. I told the girls it seemed odd to me. 2 phone calls in one day. That's about what I received in 28 years of marriage to their father, because we had no phone in the colony. About bedtime, to my surprise, Hector called again. Hi, I'm in Douglas, Arizona, about to cross over the border. You're lucky you're not in this terrible blizzard. They say the mountain is slippery and the snow makes it almost impassable. It's freezing cold. Do you want me to come back for you? I don't want you driving alone. It's especially dangerous on the narrow roads in Mexico with all the semis that take the route. I'm really concerned for your safety, Irene. Would you come this way? I was touched, but said no. This man was worried about me, not about himself. Maybe. Seems like he worried about himself too, because he keeps calling you, asking you to come. I'm just saying. Y'all tell me your thoughts. He wanted to return to San Diego if I've just given him the word. He wanted to make sure I travel safely. 3 phone calls in one day. I was impressed. I'll call again in the morning when I arrive at my sister Irma's so you can relax and know I arrived safely. What a considerate and caring man. I wasn't used to such attention. Thinking about His continual concern made my heart flutter. I knew he was a keeper. How could I ever be so lucky to have him come into my life? My main purpose for staying in San Diego and joining Hector at the later date had solely been to spend quality time with Margaret. But after 3 days of her continual absence spent with her friends, I felt completely let down. Okay, Margaret, you can't be complaining and saying you want your mom there and then you don't do anything with your mom. I'm just saying. Here I had given up a chance to travel with my fiance, and my purpose for staying had been defeated. I now wish that I had told him to return for me when he phoned and asked for the first time. I called several friends who I knew traveled to Mexico on weekends to see their families. I knew I lucked out when I was offered a ride with my niece, Mary. She was happy to have me accompany her because she felt too uneasy to drive so far by herself. When I arrived in LeBaron Colony, she dropped me off at the house of my son, Brent. He was so tickled to see me, he gave me a bear hug, lifting me, then twirling me around. His joy was contagious. We'd always shared a special bond, which our absences only strengthened. Mom, I hear you got engaged without telling us. In fact, Hector was just here 15 minutes ago. He's gone to a birthday party. Come on, I'll drive you over there. We'll interrupt the party and kidnap him while we're at it. Oh, I know that had to make her feel good to know that her son seems to be in approval. Tired from such a long trip, I insisted on waiting in Brent's truck while he entered the party. I knew several of my friends would beg me to stay and celebrate with them. I looked up to see Hector coming towards the car, striding in high gear. He beamed as though his lights were on high. As he scooted across the seat on the driver's side, enveloping me in his arms, smacking my lips playfully several times, I felt so good to be missed. The following morning, my friend, Renita, who was also visiting her children, heard of my arrival, so she rushed over to Brent's, excited to see me. Like every girlfriend, she wanted to hear every detail about our courtship and impending marriage. In our polygamous culture, it was considered the woman's right to ask a man to marry her. Therefore, it was not uncommon for the hopeful bride-to-be to inform one of the man's wives of her intentions to marry her husband. Interesting how this is what we're being told. And Cody makes it seem like, when you think about the Browns, that they were just panting after him, that the women just all wanted him, when this was a part of their culture. This is how they move. They tell the wives in some instances, because that's not happened. That just made me think that would be another reason for the wives to be upset. Robin didn't come to all the wives and say that she wanted to marry her husband. Supposedly, Robin only went to Mary. Y'all. Okay, let me stick to this. Being single and wanting to tease me, she asked, "So Irene, what I want to know is this. Are you willing to share him with anybody else?" Absolutely not. You know darn well, when a man's 65, there ain't enough to share. That's Renita knew I wanted a man all to myself. I shared the few details. She was excited things were moving so quickly. We walked to her car. We both laughed, waving to one another as she departed. I called out to her, "There'll be no more fights because I get all the nights." Hector and I visited with my children and grandchildren for 3 days. I tried making up for lost time because we hadn't seen one another for quite some time. Everyone, especially my grandkids, expressed their disappointment because they feared I was moving permanently out of Mexico. Hector never left my side, even when I began packing my personal belongings. I gave away my sparse, worn furniture and dozens of my canning jars. Hector swept through the house, even mopping the bathroom and kitchen floor. My heart seemed heavy as I fought back tears. Everywhere I turned, memories of Elaine flooded my mind. I'm positive Hector detected my feelings. The few things I'd share with Elaine, I gave away to erase any memories and bring closure. Though I was gripped with regret for having suffered from a failed relationship, I had the comfort and hope that Hector would be a blessing in my life. I knew I could trust Hector because he had suffered the same dilemma. I saw the caliber of a man he was and his dedication to God. At one point, I broke down in spite of his presence. He knew there were no words that could erase the pain and sorrow. I couldn't believe he was so understanding. Then, pulling me into him, he silently held me in his embrace. It was useless to even try to explain why I was so emotional, but I felt his empathy. Twice before, he'd suffered and lost at love. I was aware that if anyone knew how I felt, he certainly did. I owned things of little value, but what I thought was salvageable, I packed in the back seat and floor of Hector's Chrysler. I took clothing, a few gifts, and I received from my children on Mother's Day, my birthday, and Christmas. I packed my Champion juicer, 2 sets of dishes, a new block of knives, and my personal photos. My small radio, cassette tapes, and collection of small clocks were packed carefully in a new bedspread. I put them in the trunk beside our suitcase. I was surprised that at age 50, my meager possessions all fit into Hector's car. I felt sad saying goodbye to so many of my children and grandchildren when they came to see me off. Disappointment was written all over their faces. Even my daughters-in-laws were tearful and melancholy, yet comforted knowing I was embarking on a new journey with Hector to fulfill my destiny. The 4-hour drive to El Paso seemed to take eternity. Mexico, the desolate, rugged country, which I learned to call home for so many years, would soon become snapshots of my past. My dream of living in the United States and having a husband to myself was about to come true. Once we crossed the border into El Paso, I lightened up, talking and feeling like my old self again. Hector reached for my hand, insisting I leave it on his lap where he could hold it while he drove. With my hand clasped in his, he began singing beautiful love songs to me in Spanish. Although I am bilingual, most were unfamiliar, but when he smiled, emphasizing the words, I understood they were all expressions of his love. One special song, which he sang repeatedly in Spanish, then interpreted for me, became our song. In English it says, pretty little dolly with golden locks, teeth so white and pearly, lips of pure ruby. Tell me that you love me just as I adore you. If you ever think of me as I always long for you, sometimes I hear a divine echo coming in the breeze that'll always seem to say, yes, I love you, darling. Oh, so very deeply, just the same as always, even unto death. That was weird. I read it weird. Sorry, y'all. I read that weird. It felt weird. I was feeling like it was going to be poetic, but okay. It was 2 a.m. when Hector arrived in St. George, Utah. Hector insisted that I sleep in the master bedroom, but I chose to sleep on the sofa. I rose early, though I didn't feel rested after only 4 hours of sleep. I felt awkward phoning Hector's ex-wife, Judy, who lived nearby. She was the niece of my late husband, Verlin, and had always honored me, confiding to everyone that I was her favorite aunt. So I didn't think it was out of the ordinary to give her a call. She was excited to hear my voice, and she expressed her satisfaction that I was about to marry her ex-husband. That's different. She admitted that she heard through a dear friend of ours just the day before that Hector and I were getting married. She insisted on picking me up. I at least get one day with you for old time's sakes. I know it's difficult to imagine an ex-wife shopping with the future bride, but we had a riot. We constantly cracked up with laughter, especially trying to pick out a few pair of sexy panties in a size 10. She insisted that I take both the nightgowns she picked out, both to the knee and pretty modest. Judy knew the woman at the register since she herself had been a regular customer for years. She introduced me as her favorite aunt. Then, without coming up for air, she boldly announced that I was about to marry her ex-husband. I turned scarlet red from embarrassment when I saw the shock of the woman's face. She couldn't believe that we were even on speaking terms, let alone doing intimate shopping together. Judy let her know that not even an ex-husband could come between us. We walked out of the lingerie shop like two silly teenagers. I threw my purchase into the back seat of Judy's car, about to get in. Hey, Aunt Irene, what are you getting married in? Do you have a dress already? I haven't worn a dress in years with my weight. I feel thinner and more at ease in pants. I think I'll just buy a fancy blouse. I already have a nice pair of new black pants. No, no, no. You need something very nice and special for this occasion. We walked down the city block, then entered another clothing store. Judy selected several dresses she thought would be appropriate for the wedding. Of course, there wasn't much to choose from. After all, you lose fashion and style when you wear a size 20. I kept busy in the fitting room, trying on 3 dresses. To my great devastation, I looked like the broadside of a barn. My laughter died inside and I wanted to cry. Judy approached the dressing stall one more time as I was getting myself dressed. Aren't you going to model the dresses for me? When I told her how disappointed I was, she thrust a 2-piece navy suit over the fitting room door into my hands. Try this one on. I know you'll look good in it. It's true. I felt 100 times more comfortable in the suit than in any of the dresses. Judy encouraged me to buy it. I was honest with her. I'll never wear it again because it's not me. What difference does it make? You'll look great for your wedding. Judy saw my reluctance, so she headed to the checkout counter while I was getting dressed and paid for the suit herself. While driving back to Hector's house, she expressed her excitement that I was marrying him. She reiterated what a fine man he was. The 24-year-old age gap between them widened as the years passed. She thought he was a wonderful man, but she just outgrown him. She actually thanked me for loving him. Wow, that's different. Wow. She felt we make a good couple. Knowing I'd be there for him assuaged her guilt for leaving. She wanted to keep our friendship and communication open, especially since we'd be sharing their 2 teenage daughters. And that is the end. That was good. That was good. Here's the thing. I think it says a lot when people can come together for the sake of their kids. And I also think it says a lot that even though Judy left him, that there was no resentment there, because some women just still feel like even though they're gone, that the man is still theirs, or even some men. We're not going to just put it on the ladies because the men definitely feel that way. I should know. With that being said, that is the end of this chapter. Let me know what you all thought. This one was a little bit of a longer chapter, but I know a lot of you like those. So put your thoughts down below. Until next time.